This story will cover from then to now and next, all about change, how to turn losers into winners. The osprey or fish hawk, expanding its range from Scotland to England to here in Wales. A formidable bird of prey, fishing over rivers, lakes and the sea. Though it may have been saved from extinction in Britain in the past, it now looks down on a dangerous, changing world below. It and many other aquatic birds need all the help they can get. But can these dedicated people make a difference? Around the reserve there are various hides where visitors can watch wildlife in comfort. Here in the main hide you get a great view of the osprey's nest out there on a platform. Back at base, you can see the private life in detail.
She laid 3 eggs, and those 3 eggs have now hatched, and we have 3 healthy youngsters. The one of them hatched on the 1st of June, the second on the 2nd of June, and the third on the 3rd of June. So, aren't we lucky?
All carefully monitored. But what's this? It's the danger which the world now knows about: plastic. In rivers, lakes and especially the sea. We look at ospreys, but now it's the turn of them to take literally a bird's eye view of us and what we do to their home. And what will happen to that pink plastic netting in the nest? Fantastic eyesight, razor-sharp hooked beak and talons for grabbing and holding the most slippery and wriggling of fish. Plus agility and control. It all makes for a real winner, but does it and can it? It faces the same problem here in Florida, USA. It may be able to shake off the water, but probably not that something else, like that pink netting on that nest back in Wales. Scotland, England and all across Europe, wintering in the tropics, from the cold to warm coral reefs. Spot the jellyfish. Or is it? Or are they? A manta ray sieving for plankton or anything else that might be in its way. Like this. In late November 2018, a dead sperm whale in Indonesia was found to have 25 plastic bags and much else in its stomach. It had starved to death from plastic. So everything in the ocean is at risk, from ospreys that dive from above to whales and dolphins that hunt below, where jellyfish look like plastic bags and vice versa. And as big fish eaters, we are also in those food chains, webs or nets, especially ghost nets. But we're back now in Welsh Wales, at Barmouth to be exact. This area is famous for its dolphins. There are lots of boat trips out to see them. In some places you can actually see them close in from the shore. And you might see the local osprey too, and he'll see you. Dolphins are in no danger from man, but it's man's nets that can be a problem, especially when those nets are dead but not gone. The ghost nets continue to catch and kill, perhaps forever, and they're made of that so useful, indestructible stuff, plastic, and you can't uninvent it. It's made to last, and it does. It often breaks up into small pieces and then micro beads, as when fishing gear is smashed by rough seas or even lost in fights between fishermen, as in the recent scallop wars between France and Britain in the English Channel. The Welsh coast near Aberystwyth now only has relatively few active fishing boats, as here at Barmouth. Once there were plenty more fish in the sea, as they used to say. Now there are not. That may be due to pollution, climate change, and especially overfishing, and always fights and political rows about quotas, and the scandal of discarding perfectly good fish when people don't have enough to eat. Fishing itself is entangled in a mess.
Side of the vessel, don't all sit on the same side, just use a bit of ballast, I think. We will move slightly.
No, you're okay, you're on the lifeboat. Well, you can swim now, Joseph, can't you?
If you throw it in the river, the sea gets it, so perhaps that pink netting in the osprey's nest came from upstream somewhere, and the person will never know, out of sight, out of mind, and into an osprey's nest. Possibly that same person was a bird enthusiast. And could that be a red flag for danger? Obviously the hard-working fisherman doesn't want to lose his valuable gear, and this is a risk he takes every time he sets out to try and earn a living, and provide fish or crabs or lobsters for us to eat. But will he be providing more than just that? Plastic perhaps, poisonous to people, and that could affect the whole of the trade, including fish and chip shops to fancy restaurants. So hear how it goes up the food chain. Tiny microbeads from many sources, from toothpaste and shampoo to broken up fishing gear, are filtered out by plankton, much magnified here. The very fish we eat also filter out their food, that same plankton containing microbeads. They may swim in big shoals near the surface or near the bottom, where trawl nets and ropes are the armoury of the fishing industry, and an industry it is. At La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast of France, shellfish are big business. Huge areas of mudflats are devoted to farming the crop, and the French love eating them. Of course they're not fish, they're filter-feeding mollusks. But there's that word again, filter, and that's just what they do, thus collecting any pollution into their bodies, and that means plastic, mussels. Plastic. And a few oysters. Maybe including tiny bits of the stuff. But now to the Mediterranean for more mussels. Local ex-Bond girl, Caterina Marino from Sardinia, is following the marine food chain in a local fish restaurant.
Abita a Londra. Guarda, tutto sotto. E che non usa?
No, presi.
This is Mag de Cabras, grey mullet. There are many kinds of fish, important food for the people all over the world. This local person just said, the sea is getting poorer and poorer because there's not legal control.
There's a perfect example on her island of the kind of overfishing for that portion of the sea, the bluefin tuna. One fish was bought for £2.5 million in Japan, an endangered species caught in the Mediterranean in huge traditional nets. Maybe they use plastic now for any bluefin left out there. Sushi with plastic, anyone? Cheap at the price. Plastic ropes, plastic nets, plastic crates, plastic in us, confirming the global spread of the deadly material. Up from plankton to some of the biggest seabirds in the world, which cruise the oceans of our blue planet in search of food. Or is it, or will it be, delivered to an albatross chick in the Antarctic? Maybe what we dumped, or a fishing vessel threw overboard, as well as discarded plastic netting. And at the other end of the world, down the pipe, down the throat of a Fulmar chick, the parrot is also known as the flying dustbin. So it's a worldwide problem. In the Caribbean, the Japanese are suspected of extending their control into fisheries. And even perhaps whaling later. Whether the locals will benefit in any way at all is questionable. Sperm whales attract tourists, but the whales are attracted to what they think is food, like plastic bags, fishing gear instead of squid that they normally dive for to great depths. Across in the North Sea off Britain, 5 sperm whales died, full of plastic waste. They'd starved to death. If fishing gear is discarded or breaks up and away, it becomes a deadly hazard. Much more dangerous than any shark or even whaling ship. This is a whale of a tangle off the US coast as a research effort into the very rare right whale, once considered to be the right whale to kill. Now it's almost extinct.
Very close, but I wasn't going to take that. Yeah, the angle was kind of... Get ready. So we think we just popped it. Everything came off, maybe. But there's something really heavy. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. Yeah.
Back in Britain, some say this famous species is also at risk. Wild-caught salmon are expensive and increasingly difficult to get. Quotas are set, but is it too late? Is salmon farming the answer? Absolutely not. Parasites, pollution, escapes, threatening wild ones by hybridising and weakening the wild stock. Here on the River Tweed, between England and Scotland, netting is allowed, and hopefully these nets will not become ghosts of their former selves.
The question is, will future generations ever see a wild salmon the way things are going? Not only in rivers, but across the seas, where they migrate right across Europe to Greenland and Canada.
So in this shop in Newlyn, Cornwall, one of Britain's busiest fishing ports, does the variety of fish and shellfish and crabs and lobsters hide a sinister secret? Is the cod with your chips accompanied by more than salt and vinegar?
Oh, cod. Yeah, big fleshy cod. Right.
Is the fulmar, the flying dustbin, contaminated in its position up the food chain from plankton to us via this? Crabs and lobster pots, and thereby hangs a tale, a fisherman's tale, one of the last fishermen. We're in South Devon in England, where winter gales crash in from the Atlantic. Not a good spot for your pots.
For centuries, the seas around Britain have provided a livelihood for coastal communities. Hope Cove is one of these historically vibrant fishing communities. In the 1930s, there were more than 30 men fishing from the village. But times have changed. Centuries-old traditions and the heritage of a Devon fishing village are on the brink of being lost forever. One husband and wife are the last of a long line of families keeping a traditional way of life alive in Hope Cove.
I'm Sue Morgan. I make crab pots, the traditional willow crab pot. I'm one of the last remaining people in Devon who make these pots. My husband is a crab fisherman, so I was interested in finding out how fishing used to be done. He remembers these being used 40 or 50 years ago, and he was taught by a fisherman who lived 2 or 3 doors up from us, and that same fisherman taught me how to do these shortly before he died.
The price of crab over the years, sadly, has not kept pace with rising costs of everything else. Over the last 10 or 15 years, the value of crab in real terms is gone down considerably.
You're working so many more pots, and you have to work so many more pots, that it's just not the same industry as 2 men in a rowing boat or with a small engine. It's just not the same. So I think the threats to the industry for small boats and inshore boats are that people just won't bother to do it. And by the 80s and 90s, they'd gone over to the plastic and the currant pot.
And still in South Devon, with Tim Bouget.
We opened Café Ode in 2012 to really promote our locally sourced fine food to a wider audience. So people coming off the beach, people visiting South Devon, so they come and kind of taste our amazing food and drink. So at the moment we use most of our fish comes from Brixton, but we have a certain amount of fish that comes locally. So, example, sand eels, wild salmon, and things like plaice, dab, all from the estuary, riverine mussels. Again, we're promoting, when we sell these items, we're promoting our region. I think we know where the items come from. It's really important for us to have some provenance. So that's the kind of chain of custody for where the fish comes from is really important. And I think the customer is becoming more aware of this fact now. So they want to know where their fish is from, whether it's been line caught or trawler dredged. So I think that's definitely, with TV and documentaries over recent months, has definitely highlighted the cause.
Behind the back beach are the fishing boats and their essential gear and huts. And a gull passes on its way to an opportunity on the other side of the beach, here at the mouth of the River Tean, where a dredger is working hard to keep the estuary open for shipping. So what else, if anything, is in that sand being dredged? Whatever it is, the gulls are now pouring in, and a large flock is making the most of the dredger's work. At least, that's how it seems.
Razor shells live in sand and mud, filtering the water offshore, where the dredger's dredging. Yet another example of the web, the net of food in the sea, where fishermen earn their living. But for how long?
Will some of their valuable gear go astray, become more rubbish in the overloaded ocean?
The sign says, "Please take your rubbish away and leave nothing but footprints."
In the mud perhaps, now inhabited by microscopic plankton, filtering microplastics from us, picked up by gulls.
And picked up by much else. The facts, not fake ones, are that we now know that every single dolphin, seal and whale studied in British waters contain plastics in their digestive systems.
So what does Tim Bouget up at the Ode Cafe feel about all this?
I think our focus here is more about the usage of water and the chemical runoff, so we limit our chemical use. An example, plastics in the ocean, yes, it affects us, and we have beach cleans, and we've got, we give free coffee away to people who clear the beach up and bring buckets of plastic waste. So it's really important, but I think in the food chain it hasn't really kind of hit home yet to the customers that potentially there might be microbeads in the fish that they're consuming. And we don't know the impact yet, and we don't know any sort of data either to what locally is impacted with that kind of plastic.
So far, so good. And back to Wales, home of our osprey, a so-called indicator species. One of their reasons for their drastic decline in the past was the use of farm chemicals and DDT, since banned, although the big companies tried to deny DDT's deadly impact up through the food chain. Through to fish we also catch to eat ourselves. This eider duck may not be able to raise her brood and feed by diving, using her beak to grab prey. Sand eels are eaten by us. Hundreds of thousands of tons are landed from the North Sea. They've even been used to fuel power stations in Denmark. Now how crazy is that to a critical basis of the food chain? Salmon farms use sand eel products and we eat that salmon. Now scientists in Austria have found plastics in the human gut which may spread elsewhere in the body. Gastric plastic from pollution on your plate, needing plastic surgery perhaps. So far we've looked at this plastic problem and fishing gear in a few places, especially Wales. But now as tiny plankton worldwide filter the deadly product of our modern age, we take a wider look at the bigger picture as the food web widens to ensnare its victims up the rope to us. From shellfish, which also feed by filtering, researchers now find scallops in a lab consume microscopic particles throughout their bodies in 6 hours, and they stayed there for 6 weeks. Birds like oyster catchers feed on shellfish, and we eat mussels too. Fish from the Thames estuary to the Firth of Clyde in Scotland. There goes your wet wipes. Over in the Caribbean, in the Cayman Islands, hundreds of dead fish, turtles and sharks were found in a huge drifting fishing net, a giant ghost net. Up evolution from the fish to the reptiles, those ancient mariners, the sea turtles. Plastic has been found inside all species of turtles, studied in research spanning the world's oceans. 102 turtles were examined from all 7 species, with 800 pieces of plastic, less than 5 millimeters long. The average animal had more than 150 tiny pieces in its gut, the most found in the Mediterranean, from clothing or fishing ropes and nets. Albatrosses and many other seabirds have been caught and drowned going for bait on 50-mile long lines behind boats. But now those illegal boats are under surveillance because tiny transmitters have been fitted to 250 wandering albatrosses, sending signals back to scientists via satellite. They are spies in the sky. The 60-gram, 2-ounce radio transmitters will be recovered when the birds return to nest. And that's good news. But the bad news is that some 640,000 tons of ghost gear are lost or discarded every year, according to the UN. The biggest, but not all supermarkets, have agreed to act. Tesco, Lidl, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, with Nestle. But what does ACT mean? 100,000 whales, dolphins, seals, turtles and millions of fish die each year. And how much are the fishermen to blame? After all, we eat what they catch. In Newlyn, Cornwall, they try to recycle discarded nets and ropes. But when fish and scallop wars break out, their gear is smashed, costing hundreds of thousands of pounds by sabotaging their crab pots. And back where we started in Wales, Neptune's army of rubbish cleaners, NARC. Volunteers who clean up what they can, raising ghost pots and having to dump the victims. It may be a drop in the ocean, but the facts now are that the seafood we eat needs much more research. And soon, not only for our own sakes, but for those who share our unique blue planet. And also on the coast of Wales, our osprey pair has this problem to contend with. Now for the good news perhaps. One of the pair flies off with the plastic netting. She flies around. The male settles on the egg to incubate them. Good lad. And she's on the way back, lands on the perch with a fish, and no plastic.
Yes, a happy ending in this case, but will those ghost nets, still out at sea, continue to haunt all life that depends on the ocean so much? From the microscopic up through the animal kingdom. To the mightiest of all.